In the previous lesson, I've shown you around Google Data Studio interface, and we've learned about the different field types that are available to us. Now that we're starting to get familiar with the software, let's go into the meat of the subject and start building our first element in our dashboard. So let's pick up from where we've left off and open up our first report that we've generated from our first data source connection to our Atrax system. Remember that we've accessed Smartrek API connector from a link since it is not yet released in Google's partner connection list. And then we've grabbed our account ID and our API key, and then we've requested for our account's real-time data. We've then connected to the data source, and then we've added the data source to our first report. Then Data Studio created a table by default for us, and it looked like this. Now let's tinker around and make this table a little bit nicer. So let's look at the fields that are available to us. So we have name, which is the name of the sensor. We have status code, which is going to be either 0, 1, or 2. 0 means that the node is functioning properly. 1 means that the node is in a warning state. So for example, you're going to see this when a device is showing low voltage, indicating that the battery levels is down by quite a bit. And 2 means that the device is in an error state. So it could be that the sensor is not reachable on the network, or it could mean that its current value is higher than a certain threshold. So for example, if I have a pressure sensor and I've set its upper limit to say 100 psi, and the current pressure that the sensor is reading is 120 psi, then my status code would return 2 because the sensor is in an error state. Next, we have short description. This basically contains the same text that you can see on the device list on the Android app or the web app. Next, we have status. This is the description of the state of the sensor. So if we take the pressure sensor again, which was in an error state because it was reading 120 psi and its limit was at 100 psi, then status would contain something like high pressure. Then we also have type, which is pretty straightforward. It's the device type, so pressure, flow meter, or repeater, for example. So what I'm going to do is that I'm going to add all of these dimensions into my table. So I'm going to grab each one of them and drag them into dimension. And I'm going to add them in the order that I want them to appear. Like so. I don't need to get the sum or average of my columns, so setting them as dimensions is totally fine. I don't really need this. All right, so now I have all my columns in the table. Let's make this a little bit bigger and arrange the column width. Like this. That's nice, but it would be even better if the devices that are in an error state are highlighted. So let's do that and add conditional formatting. Click on the table and then click on Style. So you can see that we have a bunch of options in here. So we're going to explore that. Click on Add Conditional Formatting, and there I'm going to select a field, which is going to be status code, which if we remember contains either 0, 1, or 2, depending on the device state. So we know that 0 means that the device is okay. So let's select status code and then select equal to and then 0. So when status code is going to be equal to 0, I'm going to want the entire row to be highlighted in green. So entire row highlighted in green. Click on Save. And we can see now that we have one rule applied, and some of my rows are now highlighted in green. I can also change that and only have the column status code highlighted. And in that case, I also want to hide the text. Click on Save. There, much better. So let's add a new conditional formatting rule for the other cases quickly. So select a field, status code. If it's equal to 1, it's in a warning state. So I'm going to want only the status code column to be highlighted in yellow. And I want to hide the text. Save this. Maybe add another one. Select status code. If it's equal to 2, which means it's in an error state, then the status code column should be highlighted in red, and I want to hide the text. Let's view this. And I have one device in red here. So I'm satisfied with the result. Now, I don't really like the row numbers here, so I'm going to go back into Style and uncheck the row number options here. Oops, that didn't work. Like this. I also have this pagination, which I don't really like, so I'm going to hide it. And then I can just scroll when viewing my table like so. All right, so I'm glad with the result. So in the next lesson, we're going to add a map image and add some live data to it. See you in the next lecture.